Peterborough's community radio station, Salaam Radio, 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. You are listening to Let's Talk, our weekly current affairs show with me, Akeel Khalil, and my co-host, Hameed Chowdhury.
Assalamu alaikum.
On Salaam Radio 106.2 FM and Inspire FM in Luton. We're also online at salamradio.co.uk. You can find us on our social media outlets at Salaam Radio, as well as YouTube Live, or via our iOS and Android apps. We're always on air, 24/7, 365, uniting all communities. Please get involved with your opinions tonight by calling us on 01733 602 133, or you can text WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How you doing?
Alhamdulillah, yourself?
I'm okay. Alhamdulillah.
Good week?
It's been interesting.
Yeah, alhamdulillah,
yes.
Yeah.
But it's good to be back in the hot seat. I must confess, I did miss it.
Yeah, I see you dive in there.
So tonight's show, brothers and sisters, and people listening across the world, we have a wealth of different, all from all nations.
Inshallah.
We're going to be discussing the Balfour Declaration and a century of conflict in the Middle East. Now we're fast approaching the 2nd of November, which is the centenary anniversary for this declaration, and we felt it's really, really important before we get to that date to actually dissect this really, really important topic and how it's had a major and profound effect not only on the Middle East but all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know there's going to be many, many events that are going to be held, pro and not, should we say, on the 2nd of November. But we're going to go through that tonight. So we'd really love to hear from our listeners tonight. So it's a really, really important topic. If you have any experience of it or anything you want to comment on, as I said, you can call us on the studio 01733 602 133 or text WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978. So I'm assuming, we have a very educated audience.
Inshallah. Well, I hope we get calls in because this is a very, very important topic. I mean, it's an important topic that's not only close to our hearts as Muslims, but more so close to our hearts as human beings. Because it's a centenary celebration which will happen on 2nd November of what some people categorize as ethnic cleansing, while other people recognize it as a great achievement for a home for people who were dispossessed. So there is this kind of a double-edged sword, and I think the opinions are kind of split in the middle there to some extent.
I agree with you, and to that end, our Prime Minister will be partaking in a festive meal on the 2nd, well, I think if not on the date, but close to that date, to celebrate this.
Yeah, I think
as well, which is quite interesting.
What I read was that the venue is kept secret so far. I don't know if you've read anything else, but at the time when I read that was the case.
I haven't seen anything develop since then. I mean, you can understand to a degree why that would be the case.
Well, I mean, because I think the Balfour Declaration, which was made on 2nd November 1917, and was effectively a commitment by the Foreign Secretary at the time on behalf of Her Majesty's government, and he gave a letter to Lord Rothschild, who so there's Lord Arthur Balfour gave a letter to Lord Rothschild in which he stated the intention of the British government to facilitate a homeland for the Jewish people, which incidentally should not do anything to prejudice the civil and religious rights of people who live there, existing non-Jewish people in Palestine. So on the one hand, it recognized that that area is called Palestine, contrary to what many people try and get you to believe nowadays, is that there's no such thing as Palestine, and Israel came into existence. So, Palestine, and also enclosed within it a statement that people's religious and rights and should not be prejudiced, although not mentioning the political rights of the individuals, of the communities who live there. Because you have to recognize that in 1917, at the time, the Jewish population in Israel, or what is today Israel, but at the time Palestine, was 5%, whereas 95% of the population was either Muslim or Christian.
Yeah.
Living those lands. So we've got this kind of a declaration which effectively says, well, we're going to give you I
think we should quote this. It's a small paragraph.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to go back there, this Arthur James Balfour was actually the Foreign Secretary at the time, this statement was issued through concerted efforts from. And the more I did research on this, the more I learned about this particular person, Chaim Weizmann.
Yeah, Chaim Weizmann, yeah.
And Nahum Sokolov, the principal Zionist leaders based in London. But what they asked for the reconstruction of Palestine as the Jewish national home, the actual declaration in their eyes actually fell short of that. I will go through this now. So it's essentially dated the 2nd of November 1917, and it states the following: Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you on behalf of His Majesty's government the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspiration, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet. His Majesty's government would favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. That was basically it. Yeah. It's very, very interesting wording.
Well, I mean, obviously, this was just a declaration at the time. It had, beyond sort of a commitment, it didn't have any legal bearing.
And to that end, it was later incorporated into the Serbia's peace treaty with Turkey and the mandate for Palestine, which we'll get to the further we dig into it. The actual original document is currently in the British Library.
Yeah.
And what this essentially happened was, there was a war going on at the time.
Well, it was World War One, isn't it? I mean, this is at the height of World War One. So you'd think that people would be worried about fighting their enemies rather than trying to carve out. Trying to create effectively a state for a group of people.
Correct. And at the time, the Americans hadn't actually they'd committed a regiment to go and fight in the war, but hadn't actually started. And there wasn't any casualties, I believe, at the time for the Russians. So the Brits, who had control in Palestine at the time, felt that they should reach out to, as they termed, the Jewish Zionists in these certain states to gain favour.
Yeah, well, I mean, so you had two camps effectively. So you had Britain and France, which were key players. These are the Allied forces. So you had Britain, France, you had Russia, you had Belgium, and you had Italy. And then later on the United States against sort of what terms of central powers. So they were like Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire. And the US didn't really, it kind of got into the war really against Germany, not necessarily against the Ottomans, but at the time there was this. So Britain was had this empire and stuff. So Britain was trying to carve up these countries. So on the one hand, it said, "Oh, actually, you know what? We're sort of Ottoman Empire is quite powerful, occupy or administer so much land." So they struck an accord, a deal with Emir of Mecca.
Correct.
Sharif Hussein, and to set up an Anglo-Arab kind of initiative in which they promised him the Arab land. So they said, look, all this, Syria, Jordan, what is now Jordan, Palestine, all this right up to Egypt, all this will be part of what would be given to you as long as you form an alliance with us against the Ottomans, which he did do, and which became known as McMahon letters. So in those letters there was a commitment by the British government to hand those territories over to Sharif Hussein. Now, on the other hand, they had the Sykes-Picot Agreement, so between the French and the British. So the French and the British were the major players there. So they wanted to carve up the Middle East and all the territories around us. So they had that agreement going, and obviously at the time, what happened is that a lot of Palestine was being handed over as part of the agreement to the French, which the British didn't like, because they were committed to fighting the Ottomans in those areas. So then they thought, well, what's our alternative? I'll tell you what. Then they reached out to the Zionist Federation. So the Balfour Agreement declaration came afterwards, where there was this kind of commitment to find out a way to press the French to lease more of the land to the British. So what they did was they had a secret meeting with Chaim Weizmann and Sklo and others to then go on and press the French and other Italy and others, and even the Pope actually, to commit to giving the land not to the British but to recognize the Zionist project or Zionist project for the Jewish people. But to consider that in 1897, when this Zionist project came about, when they had this conference where they agreed that Palestine would be the place where they would look at. But before that, they were looking at South Africa and other African countries. So it wasn't. So this idea that there is a historical linkage, that may well be the case, possibly, but that wasn't in consideration, because they were considering other countries as well. So really, at the time, I don't know what the reason behind why Palestine was chosen, but certainly they felt they would be easier to kind of get that because of the British engagement. Certain people, especially Weizmann, had at the time with sort of key members in the British cabinet. But to say that, so that's the kind of the backdrop, and this is what happened with the British. They had, they'd committed that land to various different people, and according to Arthur Koestler, who is the Jewish intellectual, he said that it's a very interesting political document, because it's where one nation solemnly promises land to a second nation of a third nation. So one nation promises to a second nation the land of a third nation, and I think this is this is the kind of really it's the British doing. The crisis in the Middle East, which largely has stemmed from this kind of illegal annexing of land and imposition of foreign people of people from Europe largely on the natives, because remember that 5% of the people were Jewish at the time. These are Arab Jews we're talking about, but 95% were Muslims and Christians. Again, Arab Muslims and Arab Christians who had lived together for centuries happily, and then the Zionist plan, which incidentally, according to Sir Edwin Montagu, who was the one who opposed, actually in the cabinet, he was the only one who opposed that agreement, the declaration, and he was Jewish. He was the only Jewish person in the cabinet who actually opposed it, and he asserted that anti-Zionism, this is opposition to Zionism, is a belief held by at least half the people in this country. So Zionism was never something that was universal. It wasn't accepted, and even today it's not accepted by a swathe of Jews. It's just that Zionism is strong politically and through the media and other channels, that we somehow kind of conflate Zionism and Judaism. But as one Jewish person told me once, that not all Jews are Zionists and not all Zionists are Jews. So Zionism, in a sense, doesn't reflect Jewishness.
No, it doesn't. No.
You know, it's just a political entity, a political party, effectively. You know, that has acted to annex land and retain that purely through military power and backing of Western governments, in particular the United States.
Yeah. And to that end, I mean, as we are approaching this date, the centenary, we've seen, you know, various groups in the United Kingdom now who are pro and are going to be celebrating this.
Yes.
And where you have other groups who are going to be opposing it. And quite rightly, you can understand. I mean, you've seen the Palestinians are saying, I mean, for example, the TfL, Transport for London, has banned ads objecting the Balfour Declaration violates freedom of expression. I mean, it just beggars belief that they've done that.
Yeah.
The United Kingdom, which, you know, you would say, if you were to choose a few countries from the world where you could quite happily legally express your opinion, you'd say the United Kingdom is one of them. Here you have images of what life was like before this declaration and afterwards, and what they've done is they've used the quote, and which we've used before, which is "Nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine."
Yeah.
I urge our listeners listening right now to find me anywhere where we haven't seen that happen. I mean, what all the time as growing up and now an adult, and all I've seen is just the absolute cleansing and annexation of land in Israel, and the Palestinians have been slowly cut off from one side to the next, and it's a continuing cycle, and it's just been. And it's been on the watch of so many different presidents, so many, and we've discussed this many times.
I mean,
about UN resolutions being broken. But if we go back here, just to this declaration, and we just look at what's happened to the Palestinian people.
Yeah,
I mean, just on that alone, it's been violated.
You're right. I mean, I unfortunately, I think what happens is that what is happening now is that you know, you can say pretty much anything about any country in the world. You can critique it. You can look at its political, you can you know, aspects. You can look at its social, moral aspects, economical aspects. You can, you know, where criticism is due, you can criticize it, and where you know, it needs to be recognized, you can recognize it. Except when it comes to Israel, there seems to be almost this universal attempt at shutting down any kind of dialogue about the atrocities committed in Israel. And we're not just saying this. I mean, you know, you got somebody like Desmond Tutu who says, and Jimmy Carter, for example, who says that this is effectively an apartheid. And Desmond Tutu should know, because what he says is that he says this is worse than South Africa. In many ways, it's worse than South Africa. But yet, you know, academics, people in positions of authority, they cannot utter anything in this sense, whether it's with evidence or without. You know, it could be scholarly piece that's been well researched and provided, and that person will be slapped almost immediately as anti-Semitic, as if somehow opposition to Zionism constitutes of anti-Semitism. I mean, I have no idea how that works. No, because you know, Zionism is an organization. I mean, somebody who criticizes ISIS, you know, we all criticize ISIS, right?
Yes.
For its atrocities that it commits. Now, somebody who criticizes ISIS cannot be slammed as Islamophobic.
No.
Yeah. In the same respects, somebody who criticizes and Zionism to a large extent is in the same boat as ISIS in the you know, atrocities it commits. The only difference is that Zionism has what, you know, in the international law you would consider a state, and ISIS doesn't. But really, in effect, the attitudes and the atrocities they both commit are the same. You know, condemning or criticizing Zionism is nothing to do with anti-Semitism, because you're not criticizing, you know, Jewish people or Jewishness. I mean, you're criticizing an organization, actually a political entity. Which everyone has a right to do so. I
totally agree with you, and you know, we've seen this many times in different spheres, as you've just mentioned. I mean, we look at, I mean, as I just mentioned, the TfL. I mean, the other element, the flip side to this would be is that there's going to be celebrations for the centenary, one of which has been authorised to be at the Manchester University.
Yeah.
which is now called the Manchester Balfour 100 event. It's going to be held at the University of Manchester in the main campus later in October as part of a broader series of events to mark the anniversary of the declaration made by the British Foreign Secretary. Look, there's this double standards here. You have an element here because last month, I believe it was
the Israeli Apartheid Week.
Israeli Apartheid Week.
That's why, yeah.
And in the same university, the students had wanted to invite Palestinian speakers to give their views and talk about history and things like that. And
I think one of them was a Holocaust survivor.
One was a Holocaust survivor, that's right, correct, yeah. And they were denied this initially, and due to an admin error of some description it was. But then later on, when there was an agreement made, there were really, really strict sanctions, controls put in place, one of which was that every single person speaking at the event would have to be vetted.
Yeah, I think to a large extent they banned it initially, and then I think there was a lot of lecturers and senior people got involved, and it was allowed on the premise that it would be there'll be strict vetting process in place. But the same doesn't seem to be applied in this case. I think. Whereas this declaration is celebrated, which a lot of, one of the academics I was reading, he said that this is a centennial celebration of ethnic cleansing, which effectively what it is. If you look at the fact that in the lands that Israel controlled in 1948, between 1948 and 1949, 13,000 Palestinians were killed, and 750,000 towns, villages were ethnically cleansed. 78% of historical Palestine.
Staggering.
We see hundreds of thousands of people being moved out of Myanmar or Burma. But yet we don't. We talk about that in ethnic cleansing terms, but we aren't necessarily talking about this in ethnic cleansing terms.
Yeah, to that end, what I will say is the University of Manchester academic, and I quote.
You see, somebody just asked that we should have a balanced view, and I'm not entirely sure how. When you look at the record. Yeah. You look at the historical context from 1897 when this commitment by the Zionist Federation was put together, right up until present day. And you look at 1917 when the Arthur Balfour Declaration was made, when only 5% of the people were Jewish in Palestine. In Palestine, whilst 95% were Palestinian, and we go into 1948 when 55%. 6% of land was owned by the Jewish people, yet 55% of land was given under the UN mandate to when Britain left because of the terror attacks, effectively King David Hotel, where a lot of the British soldiers were staying. And Britain left. 55% of Palestinian land was given to people who only owned 6% of the land.
It's just
and it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. I'm not sure how. I don't know. I want to be balanced naturally, and I want to look at this Balfour Agreement in kind of a balanced term, but I can't.
No, because history and current status shows.
Somebody should ring in and tell us how we can be balanced on this.
Yes.
Take for example in 2006, UN judges. Yeah. You can go through this, and I urge the listeners to go through this really. That this wall that they're creating, they call it a fence, but effectively is a wall
on Palestinian land. May I add?
On Palestinian land. Now that I think it's 2004. Yeah, the UN resolution backed by the International Court of Justice stated that this is illegal and it should be removed, and those Palestinians should be compensated for their loss. Completely disregarded. Resolution after resolution, and you can go for resolution 194 in 1948, you can go resolution 242 in 1967, and so on and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
And so I'd be first wanting to be a balanced view, but quite honestly, when you look at Elizabeth Monroe, she says, she's a historian, she says one of the greatest mistakes of our imperial history is the Balfour Declaration, because of what it did in the Middle East and the chaos it leashed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just want to pick up a quote, actually, I've got here from Nick Thorburn. He's an academic at the University of Manchester. He said he was dismayed that the institution had allowed the event to take place on its campus, which he said commemorated the moment Britain, with its imperial chauvinism and entitlement, knowingly gave the green light to the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. Lord Balfour declared chillingly that Zionism was a far profound import than the desire and prejudices of 700,000 Arabs who now inhabit that ancient land.
Yeah,
we're heading towards a break. I know this is a really, really important subject. People have got opinions. We would love to hear from you. If you feel that there is another argument that should be discussed here, or another point of view, you can call the studio on 01733602133, or you can text or WhatsApp us on 07745278978. We'd love to listen to your opinion. I'm sure Brother Hameed would like to have another angle in as well. I mean, it's really, really important that we get that.
Yeah, sure.
I feel like we're just scratching the surface of this.
We are.
There are just so much. There is so much information available. Hopefully,
it's 100 years. 100 years of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really.
Yeah. So we're looking to pick that up shortly. So please stay tuned after this short ad break. Jazakallah ahead.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
I've just come out of Penny Akeel's orphans accommodation. Brothers and sisters, they've got a kitchen where they're getting fresh food cooked and served to them. They've got foster mothers looking after them. These are how orphans should be looked after. Sponsor an orphan for pennies a day. Call 03000 11 11 11 or visit the website pennyappeal.org. Remember, small change, big difference.
Iqra Academy is the only Muslim girls' school in Cambridgeshire where your daughter will develop her knowledge of Islam and the national curriculum in a safe environment. Ofsted has judged the teaching and learning, leadership and management, pupil behaviour and personal development as good in June 2017. Iqra Academy's qualified staff teach in small classes, and the school is producing sports teams who have a track record of succeeding at national level. With reduced fees and a good rating 3 times from Ofsted, why not consider Iqra Academy for your daughter? Enroll now to avoid disappointment. Please contact 01733 331 433 or email admin@iqraacademy.org.uk.
Do you have lots of clutter at home or in the office that needs to be kept but nowhere to keep it? Ivet Self-Storage offers a secure, affordable, clean and dry home for your belongings. We have security systems in place which are monitored 24 hours a day, ensuring that your items are safe. With a simple monthly payment, Ivet Self-Storage provides secure and tailored facilities to meet your specific requirements, whether short or long term. We offer the best prices and longest opening hours in Peterborough. For more information, please call on 01733 306 456 or visit us at Ivet Way, Westwood.
Gems and jewels. Wise sayings, interesting events, and moral lessons from Islamic history. A mother who spent wisely on her son.
A man came back to his home in Al-Medina after many years of journey. He asked his wife about his son and an amount of 30,000 dinars which he had entrusted her before starting his journey. His wife said to him, "First go and pray in the mosque of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then I will tell you about them." He went to the Prophet's mosque and saw a gathering of many eminent attendees. And as soon as the crowd gave him space, he saw Rabi'ah, his son, there. Rabi'ah had become a famous scholar and was heading a study circle at the mosque, which included the likes of Malik, Hassan, Zayd, Ibn Ali al-Lahbi, al-Musamma'i, and other figures of repute and intellect from Al-Medina. The father confirmed the scholar's identity with a man from the gathering and then left the crowd to return to his home. He said to his wife, "Indeed, Allah has elevated your son to an unparalleled level." His wife responded, "What is more beloved to you, 30,000 dinars or the status that your son has achieved?" He replied, "Certainly the ranking that my son has achieved." His wife continued to explain, "I have spent all of that wealth upon him." The father replied in a satisfied tone,
You're listening to
"Indeed."
Peterborough's community
Editorial
radio,
freedom.
Salaam Radio, 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Let's Talk, your weekly current affairs show with me, Akeel and my co-host Hameed Chowdhury.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks for rejoining us. If you want to get involved in the conversation, we're talking about the Balfour Declaration and its profound effect after in the Middle East and around the world after its, as we're fast approaching the centenary.
100 years.
100 years. We have had some interaction. It's interesting interaction for the show. We'd love to have some texts and calls. Please contact the studio on 01733 602 133, or you can text WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978. What I will say is every time we discuss this topic, there is always feedback. We would love to hear your opinions as well.
I mean, the Balfour Declaration, as we were talking about, set up in, issued by Arthur Balfour in 1917 to the Federation of Zionists. Well, actually, it was given to the Lord Rothschild to be given to the Federation of Zionists. Now, that's a document that, like I said at the start, that divides opinion. So you've got pro-Zionists, naturally, for example, Richard Crossman, who says that this is one of the greatest acts of Western statesmanship in the 20th century.
Yeah.
And as far as the pro-Zionists are concerned, they're viewing that because they use that as a premise to that and the agreement they had with the French. So I don't think that can be forgotten either, because really that's what stemmed, what kind of was the catalyst to force Britain into issuing that declaration, and then later on with the help of the US, that kind of cemented it. But on the counter side, a scholar, a Palestinian scholar like Waheed Khalidi, who says that this is the single most destructive political document on the Middle East in the 20th century. So you got his position, because effectively within a year, 1948, within a year of the UN mandate or the UN petitioning Palestine, 700,000 people were on the move because of the Zionist militia.
Yeah.
Attacking and killing 13,000 people, like I said, died. And it just continued on and on and on. We got Jordan Valley today. 94% of Jordan Valley is under 9,500 settlers control, and settlers are people who are occupying occupied land under the protection of the Israeli government, which according to the UN, and again we talked about the resolutions 194, 242, etc., which demand that Israel leave those. 250,000 people lived in that place pre-1967, now there are less than 60,000.
Staggering.
So we can look across the board and see that. So on the one hand, you have the pro-Zionists, which naturally would say, or are saying, that this is one of the greatest documents they've had because it enabled them to have a homeland.
Correct.
According to the declaration, it wasn't a state, a homeland. But the Palestinians who've suffered at the hand of that declaration, 94% of the people who lived in that land were Muslims and Christians, and vast majority of them have suffered. Have been kicked out of their homes, land annexed, and so on and so forth, and are continuing to suffer. A lot of them, 700,000, living across different parts of the Arab world, Jordan, Syria, etc., in tents. In refugee camps, and a lot. I mean, I was reading one one statement by somebody who said that her grandfather owned land in Palestine, and he was thrown out. The land was annexed, and then he ended up in a refugee camp. And his father was born and grew up and spent most of his life in the refugee camp. You know, and there are people. Those stories multiplied hundreds of thousands of times over.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the kind of. Tell me, you know, Akeel, you tell me, yeah, what's the one positive thing that the Balfour Declaration has done? And if you're going to say, well, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, well, according to the Obama's state secretary, you can't be a democracy and say you're a Jewish state. You can't have it both ways. Yeah, you're either a democracy, so you're fair treatment for everyone, or you're a Jewish state. You can't have both things.
Wasn't that Joe Biden?
No, it wasn't Joe Biden. It was Obama's. Towards the end, I can't remember. Kerry.
Oh, John Kerry. That's it.
That's right. Yeah.
Secretary of State. Correct. Yeah. Hey, good research there, brother.
Well, I remember his. I remember listening to his talk live.
Yeah.
When he gave his speech, and he was. Actually, that was the time when really the U.S. administration was most critical of Israel.
And is that also the time when it also led to them abstaining?
That's the time when they
in the security.
So it was again a history in making, because the UN has, you know, pretty much always backed Israel, right or wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
US even.
Yeah, that's what I said. The US has always backed Israel, right or wrong, except that one time when they abstained.
Yeah.
You know,
I think the other thing to add here as well, I know we're talking about the centenary, but also November brings not only the centenary of the Balfour Declaration, but also on the 29th, it's the 70th anniversary of the UN resolution to partition Palestine, which legitimized the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, the problem, I think, at the time was that a lot of this stuff was driven by Western powers. So you had Britain, France, you had Russia, you had the US, you had Italy, you know, and a lot of these international kind of institutions were them, basically. So they laid the groundwork, which ultimately ended up being a kind of a UN mandate. And at the time when it was early on in states, it was early on, a lot of countries were trying to fathom their own way to get a state and to establish a state and to get their political institutions in order and so on and so forth. So I mean, although it says UN, I don't think it was, you know, you can't compare to today's UN General Assembly, or, you know, where people are, you know, they can come together and they can discuss issues and have a vote. At the time, I think they were largely driven by a lot of Western governments, which at the time Britain was very powerful, and it had an interest. Although it left in by 1948. You know, Israel, Palestine, but. It still had an interest to maintain certain influence and control in that region.
So the question now then, brother, is we're 100 years on. Okay, 100 years, you know, we're approaching the 100 years. We've looked at the history and everything that's happened. We're in the present now. And, you know, one can't help but feel that what the original mandate was, or if for want of a better word, the declaration was at the time, it's only fulfilled its purpose for one set of people. And the course for the Palestinians and the Israel is two different sides. They're never going to meet, and I know we've discussed this before about a two-state solution.
Well, you say they're never going to meet. I mean,
it doesn't feel like it anyway. I mean, looking at the last 100 years, certainly. But I suppose what I'm trying to say to you now is, I know we've discussed previously where you said you would be have the opinion that it's better for there to be one state, and there should be rights for everybody, equal rights, rather than having the current status quo. But looking at the history and things like that, I mean, I'm quite leaning towards a two-state.
The reality of what is happening, what is in Israel, we are where we are.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, people who have been born there, who've grew up there, they don't know any other land apart from that land. Wherever they got there, illegally or not, whichever way their parents or their grandparents got there, whichever houses they occupied. There's a great book by the General's Son, which talks about that, where his mother refused to take a house because it was on the same street as people else she knew, and they were being tossed out, and the houses were given to people coming from other parts of the world. So we are where we are. Yeah. So and it's how we move forward from here.
That's right.
Where people's rights and their dignities are respected, and their rights are safeguarded, and they have a political voice. So to me, Israel will not achieve that under the Zionist banner.
Yeah.
Netanyahu, the Likud party, all these people who are really, their whole notion is that, they really do believe in the notion that human beings are are by nature constantly in conflict, constantly in violence. So they are constantly wanting to create that kind of status quo, because it feeds them. It feeds them as a party. It feeds them, and this kind of fear mongering that goes on. It suppresses any voice that says, "Hang on a second, we are mistreating the Palestinians. Let's have let's extend an olive branch. Let's bring them into the political arena, and let's have a They will, because that is not part of their mandate to cling on to power. They are using this fear mongering, and every so often they'll go and bomb Gaza. Every 4, 5, 6 years they go and bomb Gaza, destroy its infrastructure, and then the elections come around and they get re-elected because people are afraid that because of the fear mongering that's been put in place. So I don't necessarily believe in the two-state solution, but I believe in the democracy. I believe in rule of law, and I believe that it should be all the lands of Palestine should be one. Call it what you want. It doesn't really matter. A name is irrelevant. But people's rights should be protected, and people should be one person, one vote, and let the political process take its course. Let people live in peace and harmony, and that's where we have prosperity. We don't have prosperity through fear mongering, through oppression, through that's in the past. We're not in 2017, not in our time. Our time is a time where people should be brought together, not split apart, and that's the process that we should be going down.
Yeah, but it's difficult to see that happening, to be honest with you, because you also have the neighbours of the countries of Palestine. So you've got the Arab leaders and certain are quite happy with the status quo.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult.
The Palestinians with not giving them the financial support that they should be, or trying to shoulder some of the burden of the refugees, openly trying to do that. I mean, I take on board your point, which is there should be a fair system and everybody should be looked at equally. But the last 100 years don't suggest. I agree with you now in 2017, and we should be looking at it differently. But I can't help but feel that Israel is not prepared to do that in any way, shape, or form. I'm not saying that all Israelis are not that. Then they are not. You will often find when you speak to Jewish people, they're very pro-Palestinians. They're very much, saying we should be living in the same country. They should have the same rights and things like that. You do.
I mean, putting labels aside, people are people.
Correct.
And human beings feel for other human beings.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yes.
And if you feel people can feel that somebody's being wronged. If somebody is being wronged, and people feel that. So people are people, and that's no different for the Israelis living in Israel or the Palestinians living in Palestine. Yeah, actually, most people who've lost out on this are the Palestinians.
Yes,
and if they are willing to reach out, and the Arabs to a large extent, because that Israel has caused a destabilizing, has destabilized that region for a long time now. And in 2002, they said one of the stumbling blocks for that Israel always put forward was that the Arab governments don't recognize us as a state. Well, in 2002, they said, yeah, we'll recognize Israel as a state. Israel completely ignored it because that's not what they want. Israel, I mean, when I say Israel, I'm talking about the Zionist Likud party, people who want war. The warmongers. They don't want that status quo to be challenged because that's how they are fed. Through this kind of political and international support. So, but so people are people. So people, I think they would want to come together. They would want to find a way forward. And it needs to be found, a way needs to be found forward. But it needs to be fair and equal. It needs to be respecting of people. And that's that's the only way. And Israel, really, to the Israeli listeners out there, because they are listening, they really need to find a voice and elect a party that will do that.
Correct.
Don't elect these far right, extremists. To according to the UN, the Goldstein report, their kind of attack on Gaza was not so short of war crimes. So they need to kick these people out of government and get people in who are willing to have that debate and that discussion and are willing to sort of work their way forward. And I think they will find that the Palestinians will also be, because nobody wants to live in that kind of situation. And according to the UN, they have the right of return. In Israel, every Jewish person has a right to return. People who never even have any relationship with that land. Yet the Palestinians who have a historical, if not a current relationship, who have the deeds to their houses still in their hands and the keys to their houses still in their hands, have no right to return.
So what's the lessons here then? I mean, I personally, I can't see the status quo being changed. I love your idea of what you've just pitched there, and I hope somebody in Israel is listening and they do. A political party listens to what you've just said. It'd be perfect.
Well, it's a challenge. I mean, people. The problem is, I mean, there's a writer in Horas who's quite interesting. His name I forget now, and he writes. He writes along these lines, but he is being ostracized because there are groups of people, fanatical Zionist, people who don't want this message to get out there, who don't want the masses, the young people to hear this message because they don't want the status quo to change because they're perfectly happy with the way it is because right now they have the upper hand. But the reality is, 100 years ago, since before 1948, Israel didn't exist as a state.
Yeah.
So let's not forget that one country may have an upper hand today, but we'll not have an upper hand tomorrow. So it's best to bury your hatches now. Let's move forward. Let's have that let's have that discussion, and let's build on something positive.
That's great.
That's how I view it. Anyway,
Jazakallah for that, brother. I mean, it's a subject which is so much information, a wealth of information if you start doing research in it.
See, I just want to probably finish with what I mean again about this kind of Zionist entity. Professor Richard Falk, who's the UN Special Rapporteur for Palestinian Rights, he says that what Israel is doing to the Palestinian people constitutes a new kind of crime against humanity. That's the reality of what those people are suffering there. And it's not just him; it's many people like that. But that's what needs to change. Really.
Jazakallah for that. I mean, like I said, we've only just scratched the surface on this,
no doubt.
And it's approaching on November the 2nd. If you do have any opinions or if you want to share your thoughts with us, you can still call the studio on 01733 602 133. Or you can text WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978. I want to move along now to the other subject I want to talk to you about tonight. And that was the Mogadishu truck bomb, which had 500 casualties in Somalia, which was their worst terrorist attack. It killed at least 300 people, 100 seriously injured in the attack, blamed on the militant group Al-Shabaab. And the reason why we're talking about this, because there was barely any coverage in the Western media.
Yeah, you're right. There was no coverage. I mean, unlike any other. I mean, if something happens in the Western world, I mean, to take Paris for example, or even in Britain, Manchester comes to mind, or other part, the US or other places. Then we see this kind of wall-to-wall coverage. We see. Tweets from the president, middle of the night tweets from the president, and so on and so forth. But we didn't see this with this. We didn't see the level of coverage that's required. I mean, I not to get wrong, I think the countries internationally reacted. There was condemnation from all countries, effectively. I mean, there cannot be anything other than condemnation.
Correct, yeah.
And standing together with the Somali people. But the coverage that other, the Western countries get, that wasn't there. That's true.
Correct. I mean, obviously, Somalia went into mourning following the blast with more than 100 people still missing and hundreds injured. Turkey, once again, stepped in, aiding the country in Somalia. And Somalia is actually currently still asking for blood donations. But the question we're asking is, on social media especially, where is all the anger, the outrage, but most importantly, the coverage? Again, I mean, I'll give you an example. We have a tweet from Khalid Baidoun on October the 16th, where he's put, the number of people killed in Somalia yesterday was 10 times more than the number killed in Manchester in May, 230 to 22.
Yeah.
And it goes on. There's a famous Pakistani actor and performer, Hamza Ali Abbasi, he tweeted, more than 200 killed in a blast in Somalia, no Twitter trends, headlines, proof the world is governed by only power politics, not humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, again, this is another sign of kind of racist undertones, isn't it? I mean, if it were, again, we talk about white privilege very often, and you find that when there is when there is attacks in European countries, we see this kind of wall-to-wall coverage, this international condemnation, people coming together, walking in a line, we are together, we are with you, but yet we don't see the same. I mean, Turkey, is a European country to an extent, or at least in the Western world, part of it, and yet we don't see when it happened in Turkey, when there was the blast happening all the time, then we didn't see the same level of coverage. So maybe it's not just a Western thing. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's not just the kind of the racial undertone. I don't know what the reason is. I mean, I don't know why one life is worth less than another, or one person is seen different to another. I mean, I have my views on the matter, but I don't know whether that is the case. I hope not. But it does, each time something like this happens, you do wonder where, whether we are really. When we stand up with people, are we doing it because of humanity, or are we doing it because of, tribalism or nativism, as some,
or just a trend on a social network,
or just a trend? I mean, yeah. Although I got to admit that in France, they didn't light up the Eiffel Tower after it happened.
Correct.
In
that's
solidarity.
Right. I mean, the modus operandi of the terror network that committed the atrocity. I mean, it was so sophisticated. Yet, at the time,
military grade explosives. What I read, which is.
And CNN in America was still talking about the Las Vegas shooter. It's just.
Well, I'll tell you what about Las Vegas shooter is. It's very interesting because one report I read was that they were going to dissect his brain and to try and determine why did he do what he did do, because apparently there's some signals that you can, it's that level of determinant to try and determine why he. Yet when it's somebody else, we don't see the same level of trying to find out why.
No. Instead, we see
what happened, what went wrong.
Almost immediately, copious amounts of reporters on a scene. A whole faith being blamed for something.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's certainly no need for an autopsy. There's no need to look any further. There's what religion, which mosque did you go to? All these things happen, and here we have.
That's a closed book thing, isn't it? Really?
Of course it is. Yeah. It's like your perfect murder investigation, isn't it? Cut shut straight away. But I mean, the element, the really disturbing element we got here is the number of people who've passed away.
Yeah.
And I have to concur with you. I mean, I think it's very difficult for me, as living in the UK and seeing barely any recovery. You have to really go dig for what happened. You know, there's like far too much news was happening in the world at the time.
you know, when something happens and there is this wall-to-wall coverage, you don't even have to have a TV to know that something's happened. Yeah. When this happened, you know, for those people who aren't connected into the social media, or i.e. don't have Facebook or haven't got TV or something like that, it's very difficult to know something's happened because there wasn't the same level of coverage as we've already said. So yeah, I mean, it's a shame. I think, you know, one life is as good as another life, and yet we see this difference. But Allah Alim, I mean, who knows what will happen. This Al-Shabaab, I mean, I think they've taken responsibility for it. And it's, you know, how somebody can go and kill indiscriminately. You know, I mean, they didn't know a number of people die, but, you know, irrespective whether they man, women, or child, and just to kind of blow up a device and allow it to take as many lives. I mean, it's disgusting. I mean, I don't know. Words cannot describe, you know, how somebody can do that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've never ever understood the MO of a terrorist. I really haven't. I just don't understand how.
Well, it's, you know, it's not just a terrorist, but it's that kind of taking life thing where, you know, whether it's these guys, ISIS, Al-Shabaab, others who do it from using IEDs or explosive devices, or whether it's somebody sitting millions of miles away and flying a drone into you know, and allowing a missile to be fired at a wedding party. You know, I don't understand. I don't understand how somebody who can take life that easily or that willingly can sleep at night.
I suppose we all cut from a different cloth.
Well, I mean, humans are humans, but clearly some people's humanity has been dampened to such an extent that they probably don't feel it.
There is that as well. Yeah. Definitely, there is that as well. It looks like we're heading towards the end of the show.
Chloe, no way.
It's just flown by. The hour's flown by. Jazakallah khair for everybody listening tonight. I hope we've done some of the topics justice. I mean, especially the first topic. I mean, we literally did scratch the surface on that one.
Yeah.
I urge everybody to look into that.
I tell you what, there's a good book it's going to be released now. Just quickly, Bernard Ryan's book on the Balfour Declaration, Empire, the Mandate and the Resistance of Palestine, 1917 to 1936. Well worth a look. I think it's been released in October.
Jazakallah khair for that. Thanks for your company, brother. Inshallah, we'll be back with you again next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the half term. Jazakallah khair.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio.